Hey, it's Adam the Bull, and it's Monday, October 3rd, the first podcast of October. And a lot to get to off a bad Browns loss to the Atlanta Falcons. I'll break it all down. The entire podcast is about the Browns losing to the Falcons and being 2-2 4 games in. But before we get into it, I want to remind you that, of course, today's podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. We'll break down the offense. We'll break down the defense. We will break it all down. I'm going to move the camera in the middle of the podcast. I just did it right there. Lot to get to today. I know everybody's aggravated. I know half the population can't figure out when to be aggressive or not. The whole thing drives you nuts. People are going crazy. We'll get to it all coming up in the bullpen.
Podcast is not for the faint of heart.
And I do think it's time for the Browns to move on.
It's not for those who ride the fence.
He's proven nothing.
But if you're looking for someone who tells it like it is about Cleveland sports,
Everybody does fandom their way.
you've come to the right place.
I don't think he's any good.
It's time for the Bullpen with Adam the Bull.
All right, a lot to get to today. My wife, hopefully in a minute, will be bringing down my water that I forgot to bring down. Hi, hun. I forgot to bring a water in the middle of recording my podcast, and I forgot to bring a water down. So if you could bring that down for me, I'd appreciate it. No laughing matter here, but maybe we should. Maybe we laugh so we don't cry. I don't know what the deal is, but the Browns fall to the Atlanta Falcons 23-20. Down 10-0 after 10-10 at the half. We all know what happened, and there's a lot of things to break down here. Number one, you should never lose a game where the opposing quarterback goes 7 for 19, 139 yards, and a pick. And that same team has their starting tailback injured early in the game. Obviously, he played well in the first quarter, but that was it. So... thank you, hon. That is a bad job. My wife said it was a bad job out of me not bringing down my water. She's right. We got the blue cup today. I had an early water break there. Okay, so a lot of things to get to. I know a lot of people are going bananas. Every time the Browns, but it's not just here in Cleveland. It's everywhere, I'm sure. I'm just not, rolling my eyes and arguing with those people, because I don't care about their games. Whenever the Browns go for it on fourth down and don't get it, not whenever, many times, including the situation on their first drive where they go for it on fourth down, don't get it, the other team gets the ball. Fans get aggravated, right? We never complain when it works, like when the Browns had a 4th and 1 in their own territory later in the game and went for it and got it. We didn't hear anything about that. I'm sure the excuse was, well, that was a 4th and 1, this was a 4th and 2 or 3, whatever it was. We don't hear it about it last week when they went for a 4th down on the goal line against the Steelers and got the touchdown and won the game. And but that was later in the game. And okay, later in the game, it's okay to be risky. See, as fans, we're reactionary to the result, which makes sense on the surface because that's what happened. I'm going to react to it. But the truth is, the result, the decision can be right and it could not work out. A bad decision can be made, it could work out, and then we're all excited about it. Every time you do something that is maybe a little out of the norm, going for it on fourth down, a trick play, when it works, we never hear boo from anybody. When it doesn't work, all the field goal truthers and the trick play truthers get all aggravated. And then we'll say, well, why didn't we hear from you when it happened this time? And there's always an excuse, right? The bottom line is, did you just meet Kevin Stefanski today? He is an aggressive coach. I would rather my coach be aggressive than conservative. Kevin Stefanski is a good, solid NFL coach. He hasn't coached long enough. We're so quick to say this guy sucks and this guy's great, right? Last week, Stefanski's a genius. This week, he's an idiot. Most coaches in the NFL are somewhere in the middle. And if they have enough talent, they could survive long enough if they have enough talent and they have a patient owner, they can usually survive long enough to find out whether they really are good or not. Others don't have, there's no patience, and so the guy goes away and we think he sucks. When in reality, most coaches, there's some coaches that are really terrible, and there are some coaches that are really great. You don't know that really after one season or two seasons, like, especially the great part. Like, you can't be calling, Kevin Stefanski went to the playoffs, right? His first year. Oh, great coach of the year, this and that. It doesn't make you a great coach. You can't be a great coach after one season. I mean, after 3 weeks, they were calling Mike McDaniel. The Dolphins started 3-0. In that Dolphins-Bengals broadcast, they were going on and on about Mike McDaniel the whole broadcast, lauding this guy. And I like him. He's fun. He coached 3 games. We're talking about him. He's a genius. Then Tua gets hurt. Everybody goes bananas as if Mike McDaniel's a criminal now. I mean, that's how quickly it changes. It's insane to me how but it's not, because I'm emotional. I sometimes say things that are stupid in the moment, right? We all do. We all get emotional. We're like, we say things that are stupid. Sometimes I try to keep my emotions in check, but I'm an emotional guy. You know that. Most of you are too. If you weren't emotional, you wouldn't be watching this podcast every day. You wouldn't be watching the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show every day. You wouldn't be listening to Sports Talk Radio every day if you weren't emotional about your sports. That's what's great about sports. That's what the non-sports people don't get. I heard this guy the other day. I'm in the bar. Shout out to the Clevelander. I was out at the Clevelander having lunch on Thursday, right? And there's this guy sitting at the bar. He's talking to another guy about how he hates sports, and people get too carried away. Everybody's obsessed. They get upset if their team loses. It's so stupid. And I had nothing to say to the guy because I'm like, whatever. This guy just doesn't get it, right? He's not like us. He doesn't get it. We are emotional about sports. This is our thing. What is he emotional about? Cars? Civil War reenactments? Those faces will make for some good memes. With my chubby face going, I don't know. But whatever, like, some people don't get it. Guys, girls, whatever. Some men and women are passionate, some men and women are not, right? If you're passionate about sports, generally, you probably make a better lover too. That's my theory on things. But we probably shouldn't go down the road. This is not an X-rated podcast. This is R, a good solid, maybe a PG-13. Because I should be cursing up a storm here. But anyway, we'll stick with PG-13 for now. The Browns didn't lose this game because they didn't kick a field goal. We'll never know. Here's what drives me crazy. And if you are someone who believes in kicking the field goal in that situation, fine. I disagree with you. You disagree. We're not going to convince each other. I don't want to fight with you. This is going to happen on the show today. We're going to Jay's going to say, I kicked the field goal there. I'm going to say no. We're going to debate, and it's going to be stupid because he's not going to convince me, and I'm not going to convince him. Here's what I don't understand, and I don't understand how people that are field goal truthers don't get this. This assumption that had the Browns kicked this field goal on the first drive of the game, that they would have somehow definitely won a game they lost had they scored those 3 points. First of all, you don't know for a fact he's going to make that field goal. I think he almost definitely would, but you never know, right? Number two, the whole game changes from there. Remember, the Falcons had to start their drive. The Falcons got the ball on the 3-yard line, whatever it was, and they ended up with a field goal on their first drive. So if the Browns had scored a field goal, the Falcons would have instead started that next drive probably from the 25. You never know where they would have started it. Maybe instead of getting a field goal, the Falcons would have scored a touchdown there. Maybe they wouldn't have. Maybe they would have scored nothing because they had a different play call if they're starting at the 25 or starting at the 3. We'll never know what would have happened, right? But the whole game may have played differently. To be so simple-minded to say, well, they lost by 3, so if they would have scored that 3, the game would have gone exactly the same way, is stupid. And by the way, if it did, then it still would have been tied, and we have no idea what would have happened. So don't be that much of an ignoramus. Sorry, just give me a good chance to use the word ignoramus. I love that word. But the Browns didn't lose because of that not kicking the field goal. They were winning in the second half for a lot of the game. Why did the Browns lose this game? There's a few reasons, and we'll get to them coming up next. First, I want to tell you that betonline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. When a team loses a football game, you can usually point to a variety of things that happened. In my opinion, the Browns lost this football game for a variety of reasons. But the number one thing, or the two things I point to the most generally, they're the same thing, but in two specific things, right? So the Browns are with Jacoby Brissett, who, again, played okay yesterday. He wasn't as good as he was in games 2 or 3, but he played all right. But he's a limited quarterback. Anybody realistic understands this. Jacoby Brissett is a limited quarterback. Jacoby Brissett threw 35 passes in this game. And that's unacceptable. Kevin Stefanski, like most coaches, going to back what I said at the beginning, is a decent coach. Maybe someday I'll think he's great. Maybe someday I'll think he's below average. I don't know. He doesn't suck. Anybody that says he sucks is wrong. He doesn't suck. We don't know how good he is, right? At this point, to me, it's kind of unknown. But when I look at what he did yesterday, I thought he had a bad day. And there are times where Kevin Stefanski doesn't get it right and goes away from his strength. His strength is running the football, and at times he goes away from it too much. And yesterday was one of those examples. He did not have a good day. That doesn't make him a bad coach. It means he had a bad day coaching. You cannot, if in this game where Atlanta had no passing game, Atlanta never had the biggest lead they ever had was 10, and that was at the end of the first quarter. The Browns were never fighting to come back from a big deficit in this game. And from the second quarter on, they were right there in it. You know, once they scored for the first time in the second quarter, neither team ever led by more than a touchdown. So there was no reason at all for the Browns to be 50-50 on offense. The Falcons, despite losing their top running back, Cordell Patterson, early in the game, said, we have to run the ball. Our quarterback is not good. And if we're going to win, we're going to run the ball. They ran it down the Browns' throats in the second half. Now, overall, I think the defense holding a team to 23 points, you should win most of the time. But obviously, they got gashed in a couple of drives late that led to 10 Falcon points. And this was with backup quarterbacks, Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley. I never heard of Caleb Huntley. Algier was a fifth-round pick of the Falcons this year, who I just, coincidentally enough, traded away in my fantasy league a few days ago in a keeper league with 1 million players. So anyway, they committed to the run, and they ran 35 of their 54 plays were runs. 35 of 54. For the Browns, they had 35 passes and 35 runs. The Browns had 16 more plays than the Falcons and chose to throw the ball on those 16 more plays. There's no way in this game where the Browns had 16 more plays that they should have the exact same amount of rushing attempts as the Falcons. The Falcons were not running the ball any more effectively than the Browns. Now, they ran it effectively, but so did the Browns. Both teams were doing well in the run. But what's shocking is that the Browns didn't run it 50 times, which is what they should have done in this game. Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb had 29 rushing plays. That should have been a minimum of 40. There's no reason why Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in this game should not have run the ball at least 40 times, if not 45, if not 50. And maybe that sounds extreme, but it was so obvious watching this game that the Falcons could not stop their run. But the most egregious thing, and this goes back to, going for it on fourth down, and people got so worked up about this situation. You look at the Browns in the red zone, right? The Browns, first time they got the ball, 2 passes, 2 runs. The first time they got it in the red zone. The second time they got it in the red zone, they finally scored on a Jacoby Brissett pass. But again, too many runs, especially in the second half, too many passes when they were in the red zone. The Browns throw the ball. With Jacoby Brissett, the Browns should not be throwing the ball that much in the red zone, and especially inside the 5. And I thought that was a big mistake by Kevin Stefanski in this game. So he did not have a good game. Once again, and I don't know if this question was asked in the postgame, I need to understand why in the waning moments of a lot of these football games that Nick Chubb is not in the game. Now, I know what the answer probably will be is that if you're in the hurry-up offense, that Kareem Hunt is the better pass catcher than Nick Chubb, which is true. So that's why Kareem Hunt's in the game. But what I would say to that is we're not saying take Kareem Hunt out of the game. We're saying have Nick Chubb in the game as well. I don't understand why when I'm trying to score a touchdown late or even get into field goal position late, why I would take my best player off the field. This, to me, is a flaw. It's a flaw that we see in a lot of teams, and I'm surprised as intelligent as Kevin Stefanski is, and why they have not learned this lesson, because we've seen this too often. This has been a mistake. I would like to have a real conversation with Kevin Stefanski about why this continues to happen. I don't want to see Anthony Schwartz on the field. I don't want to see David Bell on the field. I don't care about the 13 tight ends he wants to play. Nick Chubb is your best player. Nick Chubb's got to be on the field when the game is hanging in the balance. And this is one thing that people that are mad with Stefanski, this is a fair argument and a major flaw in his coaching. I cannot take him out of the game when the game is on the line. He is my most reliable player. And if that means making Kareem Hunt, putting out Kareem Hunt as a wide receiver in the slot or wherever, instead of Anthony Schwartz and an unproven David Bell, although he did make a nice catch late, or any of these guys, I don't care. You win with your best players. Put your best player on the field when the game's on the line. And right before it came apart in those last few plays, right, where Jacoby eventually throws the pick to end the game, well, not to officially end it, but essentially end it. Think about this. The Browns had the ball 1st and 10 at the Atlanta 41 with 1:36 to go. Now, no timeouts. 1st and 10 at the Atlanta 41. Now, at that point, okay, you can say, well, you got to throw the ball because you're trying to score a touchdown, which is true. Well, at least the second part. You are trying to score a touchdown. However, in my opinion, you have just as good a chance of scoring a touchdown by running the ball. I wouldn't normally say that, but for this team right now, I think that's the case. Not to mention, with 1:36 to go and no timeouts, it's going to be hard to score a touchdown. You're most likely going to have to settle for a field goal. So the first thing you have to make sure you do is get into field goal range. But I could argue that 1st and 10 at the 41, if that drive had ended at the 41, you would have kick the field goal to tie it. Now, you don't know if you're going to make it. Kid's still a rookie. Just because he's hit a couple of big kicks doesn't mean he's going to make it. But you would have a chance there. Why do I keep getting this stupid video keeps playing? Driving me nuts here. Mute that stuff, will you? So, instead, on that series, the Browns throw it on first down incomplete. And then, after the incomplete pass, they go a short pass, but then there's a penalty, and then a sack, and then obviously the interception on 3rd and 23. So you were in borderline field goal range, and you went backwards because you decided to throw the ball. Now, that is being somewhat reactionary to what happened. However, my thought all along, once you got it to the 41, is keep running the football because that is what you are excellent at. The Browns right now are an adequate passing team with limited weapons. The Browns right now are an extraordinary running team, and that is what you have to do when the game is on the line. But you didn't have your best running back out there, and you didn't run the ball, and that doesn't make any sense. Now, just like I say with, not kicking the field goal didn't necessarily cost them the game, well, the same thing here. Like, maybe they would have ran the ball, maybe they would have lost anyway. We'll never know. I just don't understand why, when you're dominating on the ground, you wouldn't stick with it. So many coaches get scared to run it. And kudos to Atlanta. Well, I can't think of the name of their coach. I can see his face, and I can't think of his name right now. Doesn't matter. We don't care. He was the Titans' offensive coordinator. What the hell's his name? Arthur Smith. Arthur Schwartz? Not Schwartz. Arthur Smith. Why they committed to the run, even with a bad offensive line and backup backs. They said the Browns can't stop us. We're going to run the ball again. The Browns never did that. Never did it. They ran it 50% of the time. 50% of the time, and when it mattered the most, they threw the ball again. That's a huge disappointment. All right, is the season over at 2-2, or do the Browns still have a pulse going forward? Did we overrate the talent? Did we overrate the coaching staff? Did we overrate their chances with Deshaun Watson? It's all coming up. Now on to Sleeper, fastest growing fantasy platform. Sleeper climbing the charts with over 4 million users. In addition, they recently launched 22 new features, including over-unders integrated into fantasy. The first sports contest game built into the fantasy experience. Not only can you enter a contest via over-under itself, but you can also do so through your fantasy league's matchup screen. It's super simple. First, in any sport, choose 2 or more players that you like and pick the over-under. For example, rushing yards in football or number of points in basketball. Then choose the amount of money you want to enter into the contest. If you pick correctly, you can win anywhere from 2 to over 20 times the money you put in. The main reason I'm excited about Over Under on Sleeper is that it's the only app where I can join my friends' contests and play together. And most importantly, talk some trash. So stop what you're doing, download Sleeper, play the Over Under game, have fun, talk trash, make some cash. On your mobile phone, join our listener group now at sleeper.com/lockedonbets or sleeper.com/lockedontoday. And Sleeper will automatically match your first deposit up to $100. Again, go to sleeper.com/lockedonbets, sleeper.com/lockedontoday, and you get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. When the season began, and we knew that Deshaun Watson was going to miss 11 games, I predicted the Browns to finish 9-8. Now, I thought there was a chance they could be better. Also thought there was a chance they could be worse. I thought for them to be better, they had to start at least 3-1, maybe 4-0 against the weaker part of their schedule. That obviously hasn't happened. They've gone 2-2. All the games have been fairly close. All have come down to the wire to some degree. Now, it's easy to just write off the season If you ask me today, do I think the Browns are going to make the playoffs? Well, obviously, I'm going to say no. I picked them to go 9-8 to start the year, at the beginning of the year, and I had them going 3-1 in these first 4, and they haven't. So, no, as of today, I do not think the Browns are going to make the playoffs. I didn't think that would be the case in the beginning of the year either. However, some things have changed at the quarter pole of the season. A lot of other teams that I expected to be better are not playing great. The league right now, and again, it's still very early, and I don't want to make sweeping judgments, especially about things that look different from what I thought they'd be. I thought the Steelers would be bad. They've been bad. They've lost 3 in a row. So I'm not surprised there. Am I buying that the Raiders are a bad team? I don't think the Raiders are a bad team. I'm not going to change my opinion based on 4 weeks. But the early sample size says some teams that we thought would be good are not playing as well. Doesn't mean they're not good. It just means they're not playing that well. Nobody in the AFC North is playing great football. And if the season ended today, the Browns would be the champs of the AFC North. Now, that's stupid and meaningless, but the only meaning is that it's not over at 2-2. Yes, the Browns are 2-2 like the Bengals and the Ravens, and yes, you can argue that those teams have played tougher competition through 4 games. However, as the season goes, we don't know in the end who's going to be good and not. We all had our feelings of it going into the season. You thought this team was going to be good and bad. You may have slightly changed your opinion. You may have dramatically changed your opinion. I think that's a mistake. But okay, there may be an injury that has changed your opinion or whatever. But as the season goes, there are always going to be teams that you thought would be good that won't, and there are going to be teams that you thought were bad and won't. And so right now, you look at what the schedule coming up. On paper, going into the season, these next 7 games looked brutal. Now, they still look tough, but at the moment, they don't feel quite as brutal as you thought they would be going into the season. I think that's pretty clear. And the Browns could still go 2-5 in these next 7 games, and it could be a total disaster. And if they are 4-7, then yeah, they're not going to the playoffs. But you never know how it's going to turn out. There are things about this team that we don't like. The defense has been a huge disappointment this year. The offense has been much better than anybody could have possibly expected because the running game we all expected to be great, and it has been. The passing game I thought would be below average. It has not been. It's been above average, maybe even better than that. As a whole through 4 games. Jacoby Brissett has certainly been a lot better. The defense has been significantly worse. Obviously, there were injury factors in this past week's game, but teams have injuries. It's part of the sport. You can't whine and complain about it. You've got to be able to step up. I would argue that the Browns did a poor job of developing depth, and we knew defensive tackle going into the season was going to be a problem. And it has proven to clearly be the case. The defensive tackle position is a major weakness, and without Clowney and Garrett, it shined even more brightly. The Browns' defensive line was pretty bad for the most part yesterday, and outside of Clowney and Garrett, it's pretty bad, just period, as we expected, and we've seen nothing to make you think it's going to be any better than we expected it to be. Positives and negatives. In terms of the coaching staff, any talk about firing to me is crazy. I feel like Joe Woods has not done a very good job this year. He deserves some criticism. If he cannot get this defense turned around, I would replace him at some point. I generally don't believe in firing coaches 4 weeks into the season. If we're at the halfway point, if we're at the bye week or something, and the Browns feel like there's a defensive coach on their staff already that they feel like can turn around this defense, then go ahead and fire him if it hasn't been turned around. And at the very least, you're going to fire him at the end of the year if it's not turned around. I would, frankly, I think the special teams have been a joke. I think Kevin Stefanski feels too beholden in a way to Prefer because he was with him in Minnesota. I would definitely fire him at the end of the year. I would get a new special teams coach in here. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Kevin Stefanski, I said in a moment of weakness a couple of weeks ago that Kevin Stefanski should possibly give up the play calling. I had never said that before. I will never say it again. I was wrong to say it. He is the play caller. He is flawed. He's made some mistakes, and he's got to get better. But he's the right man for the job, and all the young coaches in the NFL are calling plays. It's just silly. It's a silly argument. We don't know if it'd be any better. And I think by and large the offense has been pretty good. Through 4 weeks, the Browns are tied for fourth in the AFC in points scored, with Jacoby Brissett as their quarterback. Only teams they're behind: Baltimore, Buffalo, and Kansas City. That's the list. And they're tied with Jacksonville. That's a bit of a surprise. That's a big surprise. So the defense, for the most part, has been the problem with this team. They are, on the defensive side, in terms of just raw points, seventh worst in allowing points. In terms of point differential, they are plus 10 on the season. In the AFC, that is actually sixth best, believe it or not. So we got a long way to go. Don't jump off the bandwagon yet. I'm surprisingly calm coming off what is a bad loss. There's no doubt about it. Usually I'm worked up about these losses, but for whatever reason, I'm trying to relax. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Adam the Bull. Check out my website, adamthebull.com, my Cameo at Adam the Bull. Make sure you subscribe and click the bell for the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Over 15,500 subscribers now. Keep going, getting strong. Want to get to 20,000 here before. I'd like to get to 20,000 before the end of this month, if we could. Might take a little longer than that, but let's get it going. And that's where you find the podcast as well. And check out the Locked On Browns podcast with my man G. Bush and Jeff Lloyd as well. Talk to you tomorrow right here, The Bullpen with Adam the Bull. See ya.